Hey, you. Let's talk about the Polaris a little bit here. It's the most talked about ship in the streets right now. Everybody in the PTU is doing their damnedest to get a glimpse of it in the flybys. Folks reevaluating their fleets to see what or if they can flip some things around to make an upgrade to it. And the question has invariably become, is it worth it? When the RSI Polaris drops, it'll be second to none as far as size of ships available to fly. Well, for military ships anyway. The 890 jump is 210 meters, good clean 19 meters longer than the Polaris, but that's a space yacht. I know Fleet Viewer says 166 meters, but I believe that's outdated. Two size 4 shields, just like the Idriss, although in the past, CIG said they're not as strong. Quantum drive is one size lower than the Idriss. 6 or 7 turrets with a bunch of them looking like broadsides compared to the 10 Idriss turrets. Somewhere between 10 and 16 torpedoes, depending on where you get your info. Kind of a baby Idriss with a hanger on top that can fit a Scorpius or a Saber or smaller. Firepower, got what you need unless your targets hang right behind them big thrusters or in front of the canopy in the turret blind spots. A skeleton crew for the Polaris is 6 people versus 8 on the Idriss, but the Polaris crew would only have to double up on jobs in a hot engagement where an Idriss skeleton crew would be pulling triple duty. Either way, you'd have to pull folks out the turrets to keep the ship running with a skeleton crew. The Polaris is a really solid choice for most medium-sized and higher orgs. Test Squadron with their 23,000 members is an outlier, and an Idriss and every other giant ship makes sense for them since they should always have folks ready to crew up. Most orgs are just a handful of buddies who met in the verse and know each other at least a little bit, enough to know that they enjoy running together. And on a good day, they can get 5 or 6 people together to crew a Polaris. That's the advantage it has over the Idriss. Compared to the Perseus though, the story changes a little bit. Perseus has 2 or 3 less turrets, but it got 20 torpedoes to put a hole in you. It's listed as being for 1 to 6 crew, which makes it more viable to run with less people. Doesn't even need an org to pull it out the hangar. If you can scrounge up 4 or 5 people, you got all the turrets filled, and if you can get more, you got enough people to wear engineer hats running around keeping you ship shape while your gunners stay cooking. Most of the time, it's a job trying to get a full hammerhead crew complement. Perseus pilot can access torpedoes. Doesn't look like the Polaris pilots have any weapon control, plus they need a dedicated weapon officer in the torpedo room. Soloing a Polaris for any combat at all does not seem to be an option. 9 times out of 10, Perseus is just going to be a sharper ship for most people to gather up a few folks in to take down some ops on the whim. The medium-sized ship hangar is a big plus for the Polaris though. Being able to refuel, restock, and repair anything smaller than the Saber stretches its functionality out a bit. So if you don't mind sitting on the perimeter, it can keep the party going for friendlies. Repair will likely be done on foot with repair tools, so it won't be able to fully repair ships like a Crucible does, but it has enough space to hold enough RMC to keep the patch jobs flowing. Plus it has a med bay. That's going to be the deciding factor for a lot of folks. Perseus has no med beds, at least none that have been announced at the time of this video. It's possible they could add one, but seems unlikely. Even a bigger hammerhead has none either. A med bay is nice, but it probably wouldn't see much use on a Polaris, maybe in search and rescue scenarios, possibly picking up ground troops on a rare occasion, situations where an Apollo medevac would be more effective but just aren't available at the time. Other than that, med bay would probably get most of its use from crew who didn't bring anything to eat or drink. Polaris is a little ridiculous to be trading in because of its size, but it can because it carries 432 SCU, so it can bring in some coin to cover part of its expenses. Perseus only has 50 SCU. It'd probably be a pain to trade with the Polaris though, because it's 181 meters long, almost 30 meters shy of the whole seat, but cargo is all on the inside, so wherever you park it, whether it's at an outpost or ship hangar, it's going to be a long trip moving cargo back and forth. You do got a cargo ramp on one side and a small cargo elevator on the other, so you're going to need to throw on your short shorts while you playing stevedore without a cargo. What neither ship has, which is a big deal to me, are some damn windows outside the bridge. They're not space yachts, but they're not submarines either. I mean, well, they kind of are, but that would drive me batty to be stuck in a tin can with the only windows being on the bridge. I love the windows right here. See, that's the thing about the Polaris, man. That thing ain't got no windows on it outside the bridge. At least the Idriss has some windows dotted around the P-ways and turret rooms and that very cool view over the flight deck. They're 75 USD apart, and if you just looked at stats, size, and features, on paper it's easy to say that the Polaris is by far worth that amount of money and more over the Perseus. But if you don't regularly play with 8 or more people, those paper benefits start to dissipate because they're not being put to use, and it's more of a drag on your resources. Or after that new booty honeymoon week or two, may even just spend most of his life mothballed in the hangar next to that hammerhead you can't fully crew up. Everybody likes to dream about what they'll do with the next ship, but maybe take a look at what you're doing with the ships you have access to now and decide that if a much bigger military ship will enhance what you're already doing. If you are constantly maxing out the hammerhead, then a Polaris will be a good look. If you aren't, Realistically though, everybody loses control every ship release and has to have the new, not now, but right now. C'est la vie. I see a bunch of Polaris purchases coming up, followed by a lot of folks melting them and buying the more manageable torpedo chucking Perseus when it drops. But that's me though. Really, the most crew love with smaller groups will happen in the classics like the ship in this next vid. Big Invictus love to all my execs, Patreons, YouTube members, and super chatters. Your support is very much appreciated. Fly dirty citizen.